All right. Hi, y'all. My name is Shane Brodie. I've been traveling around the country talking to trans, intersex, gender nonconforming, non-binary, etc. people, and sometimes allies, parents, a couple of minors, which has been great. And now I am in, I can't tell what state I'm in. Am I in Missouri or Kansas?
Let's just say it's Kansas City.
Okay.
In the greater metropolitan area.
I am in the Kansas City metropolitan area. I keep crisscrossing the border here, and so I get lost of what state I'm in. Interestingly, though, it's kind of important sometimes to keep track of that because there's different laws. And unfortunately, we have a lot of laws that are coming up that are hurting. I'm just going to say it. They're hurting trans people, targeting and hurting us. So anyway, I have a guest today, and they're going to introduce themselves in the way that they want to.
Thank you, Shane. My name is Faith Matthews. Mm-hmm. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. Feel free to use whatever. Sometimes if I feel like people are only using she, her, and are not necessarily recognizing that I don't necessarily fit a binary, I might ask them to do they, them. Other than that, if I feel like I'm being seen as someone who is both non-binary and trans femme, either are fine.
Yeah. For me, I've been going by he. I was she, and then I went by he for a long time, and I was kind of adamantly he, and now I'm kind of moving towards a little bit of they recently, just because I feel much freer, and part of that has to do with non-binary and also agender, etc., like people who are kind of expansive in this way, doing their own activism. So they're actually helping me be a little bit freer, which is kind of cool.
Definitely have the same experience of when I first came out. Like, it was very important. Very precise, very well-defined labels.
Mm-hmm.
Like these,
and it was enforced by the community itself too.
Yeah, it certainly was. Like she, her, and woman and lesbian were all things that, yes, I would echo that had been enforced by the community, but I think 90% of it was me. As I came out. It's like you're taking this bold step, this journey away from something that's comfortable and familiar, even though not in a good way, but it's not who you are and it's not good for you, but it's what you're used to. And as I went forward, I just needed something that felt like grounded and because I felt like I was fighting, like, don't call me this, don't look at me like that, don't look at me as a straight man. So like these labels were very important.
Did you ever go by dyke?
I still do.
Okay, great. Because actually, I got to say, you remind me of the dykes that I came out with when I was a young person, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. So, yeah.
I love that for me, and I try to give myself permission to use that.
Yeah.
I did have a partner one time whom her sister and her sister's partner were cisgender lesbians and were very, I was told not to use that in front of them. And that's a really tricky thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of dykes were told, who were cisgendered, also were told not to use that word in front of lesbians.
Right.
So there's tension between the lesbian community, and the dyke community.
Right.
Yeah. And also bisexual women, cisgendered women would also use the word dyke.
Oh, yeah.
Or bike.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting how we are always sort of policing each other's language and identities and gatekeeping, all the time, even in these small little communities,
And where does sensitivity to the person next to me?
Yeah.
And policing my language, where's that line?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you where it is all the time.
Yeah.
You kind of have to feel that out.
Yeah, it's a negotiation.
Right.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and so like, I'm comfortable being called a dyke. I like it.
Yeah.
If that becomes sensitive for somebody,
Yeah.
I can respect that, and we can negotiate. Like, don't erase me.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be I'm going to be sensitive to you.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I'm not trying to impose anything on you, but I'm just so thrilled at this because you seem a little bit butch, and in a way that is like a soft butch, and I just love that, and that's totally coming from my experience, and I hope that doesn't offend you, but it comes with like that identity of being like, a dyke, and like the early dykes that I hung out with, like some of them were trans women and they were a little bit butch, and it was really controversial. And I would expect that probably at this time it is also a little bit controversial because the femme part is sort of expected or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not offended at all. In fact, I feel actually very flattered. I feel seen.
Okay, great.
I feel seen.
I love that. Thank you so much.
And to be
because you really do remind me so much of the dykes that I came out with. Yeah, it's great.
Right. And they're like you talking about the policing.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, I don't know you at all, and I had some fears like, oh my goodness, is this person going to accept me? Police me, like, are you femme enough to be a trans woman?
Sure.
I mean, and you just, I get that. Just in general, you never know. You never know what, and especially sometimes trans people feel like they have a little more authority to police a trans person.
Oh, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the trans.
You're not quite doing this right, sister.
Right.
Let me help you so you pass better.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, well, your sibling's fine. I mean, just fine. If someone tried to throw that sister at me in a police scene, like, sibling's okay. Right.
But you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Like they're like, it's almost like it's control, but then it's also like they're pretending that they're helping you or something.
Yeah, right. No, you see, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, girlfriend, you're not doing it right. We got to hold your hand and get you to where you need you need to be.
Right.
But it's really where they need you to be.
Right. And also you're just so way past them.
Right. I'm kind of like, yeah. Like,
I already did that.
Right.
I already did that,
Yeah, let's come over here to the more like inclusive trans experience. We all have space and not just these two little nice little boxes.
Yes.
It's like cis experiences these two confined boxes, and I don't find it liberating just to switch.
Yes.
Just like
right. Just switching boxes. Yes.
Right. It's still a confined box, and as much as I love my dykeness and love that, I also get really like excited and love to celebrate the femme trans guys.
Yes.
I love that. You know.
Right. Yeah, they're glorious. They're just like, then they hang out in queer and sometimes even gay culture and get along very well. Yeah, and are appreciated. Totally.
And I think that no matter how you identify, even, very binary, very straight normative, or however that, I don't want to dismiss anyone's identity. I like people who are comfortable in their own shoes. Like whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And if somebody isn't comfortable, you wonder what's going on with them. Like, is it something that you're doing? Is it, are they upset with themselves? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah. Are they experiencing trauma? Who knows? So speaking of that, what is your community? Like if you're out going to events and that sort of thing, what kind of events are you going to?
I've really been kind of more of a homebody in the last few years, but
does that have to do with COVID or?
Just maybe age and trauma and just that's a great question, but my community is, I hope, inclusive.
Okay.
I hope inclusive and very queer. I would say if I'm gonna need to throw a label on it, queer. Okay. And
is that where you come from first?
Yeah. Well, I think that's where, as I was coming out and faced with like all the variety of communities, that's what felt like home first.
Okay. And what kind of era was that? Like 10, 20 years ago?
2012 was when I came out.
Okay, so 10 years ago.
Yeah, about a little over 10.
Yeah. I love how queer is always so open, and it's just like kind of everybody, you know?
Yeah, and everyone can define it differently, but for me and the queer company I keep, that's not just gender and sexuality. It is if you're coming to a space in a queer space, I hope you are confronting ableism,
right? Intersectional,
very intersexual, race, body autonomy, all these things. Like that's what I need from a queer space.
Right.
If your definition is different, okay, but when I'm invoking a queer space, these are the things that I need.
So for you, it also has like a justice component, politics, a political component, and would you define that as like leftist, perhaps? Or progressive, or
it is definitely a justice. Is definitely equality and inclusivity. You use the word politics, and you know what?
I know you got a little grumpy for a second.
So and that's not really necessarily directed towards you. I see a lot of from the right, and conservative, anytime you bring up inclusivity, they're like, oh, you're being political.
Sure.
Well, you know what? My approach, my agenda can be political if it needs to be. And that's a tool to try to advocate, speak louder for inclusivity.
Yeah.
To me, it's it doesn't need to be political.
Sure.
If everyone in the space agrees to it.
Sure.
The politics is the tool to try to negotiate.
You're talking about as a greater society.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's kind of how I feel. It's it can be political, but I don't think it is inherently.
Yeah. Sometimes we need a break from all the fighting.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And just form community amongst ourselves.
Right. And it's almost like we need to approach spaces with the assumption of everyone passive and everyone willing to let's not go in fighting. I'm a big leftist, big activist. I have marched 250 people in around Westport area. Okay. I'm all for the fight if we need to.
Yeah. But
you know what? I have limited spoons, energy, time. If I don't have to, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's not be the first. I don't know, no matter where you come from, what is your philosophy, and let's first start with the assumption that we can agree and we can come to a middle ground. Maybe we can't. And
that's very hopeful.
Yeah.
I like that because I think that everybody does have the capacity for growth.
Right.
Yeah. That's where that comes from, right? That we could work toward a better future.
And if I'm in a space with someone that we're going to need to verbally, intellectually fight it out, we can always get there.
Yeah.
We can always get there. Because if you close the door to I don't know, peaceful just seems too broad or general, but just
and a little wishy-washy
sometimes.
Yeah.
But
a little too liberal.
Yeah.
Liberal.
Absolutely. But if we can come at a very just calm and surreal, level-headed, let's keep that door open first. And it's like we can always hash it out. That unfortunately that always seems to be an option.
Yeah.
But
we need to keep people in community, I feel like. Because, and this is just, my point of view, maybe you don't have to agree with it, but I see a lot of activists doing a lot of cutting of relationships. And if we think of that as what are the core values of what we're trying to do? We're trying to keep people in community. We're trying to learn from each other. And if we cut, who's left? There's not a lot of people left.
Right.
And perfectionism becomes the goal. And there's no forgiveness, I feel like. Right. So I feel like we need to move from more of a value of thinking about community first, even if it's hard. Even if it's hard.
Yeah. I definitely, I feel like I'm evolved and I very inclusive, and sometimes I look at other people and go, oh man, they're not quite there yet. But I have to take a step back and say, okay, they're not where I'm at, and I'm not where they're at.
Right.
And to put the hierarchical judgment on it.
Right.
And maybe
you gotta be humble about yourself too.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know everything.
Exactly. Right. I remember
there's so much I need to learn.
I remember hearing someone talk about sexual assault and use the term victim. Afterwards, I pulled them aside and said, hey, most of the people in my space would tear you apart for saying that. And, survivor. And this person says, you know what? And like the way this person handled it was excellent, and said, I hear that. Yeah. I respect, I totally understand. As I've been doing this work for 15 years, I've called a person a survivor and they felt insulted by that. And they feel like that term minimizes their experience of how when the assault happened. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. That's another one of those negotiations.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I thought this person was here and I'm here, but in their experience, and not the hierarchy's too important, but they had an extra piece that I didn't see.
Right.
And so that, I learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
Like, that's very valid. And where
sometimes what you think is correct is not always the correct thing.
Right. And I would say 90% of the time, survivor is something that people hold on to more. But like to give that space.
Yeah.
Because that's valid.
Yeah. Totally. So you just alluded to some activism that you've done. Have you done like direct action kind of things? Have you led groups?
I've done a little bit of everything. I started off attending a trans support group 11 years ago. Ended up running it for 10 years.
Okay.
Just stepped down.
So you just jumped right in there.
Yeah. And I just stepped down in December.
Okay.
Then I went to a transphobic speakers event in 2019 at a local university.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be a peaceful protest. And like one of the really challenging things with there is the university squashed all. It was totally hypocritical because they said, "Oh, this is free speech. Hate speech is free speech." And
was that out at Lawrence?
That was UMKC.
Okay.
It was in Kansas. It was in Kansas City. So, what was really hypocritical is like the LGBT had an event, and this conservative group got to have their counter protest at their table, and like, okay, all right, that wasn't good enough. They wanted to bring their own speaker. And gave an anti-trans speech, but the university forbid any staff, faculty to help students coordinate and organize counter-protests. And like, that's hypocritical.
Yeah, really.
Right. Yeah. And so...
You're going to allow one situation, but not the other.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They can protest ours, but we can't protest them.
Right.
And so I think most people realize that doesn't prevent protest, that prevents organized protest. And I went as
organized protest.
Right. And it got out of hand, and one person was arrested, and myself and a dozen other people were physically assaulted by the people that are meant to keep us safe.
Right.
Trying to witness this arrest, and we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know why they're arrested, what's going on. We just know that this young protester is down on the ground,
right,
with a knee in their back, and
right.
Anyway,
right. Anything could happen at that point.
Exactly,
because the police have there's no bounds really.
Yeah. And like I was disappointed in the police, but I also saw there was this really anti-trans, very pro-Trump element in the room. And it was scary. Because if the police don't act, these other people are.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's about scary to me. So anyway, like, the question was after that.
Well, you're brave to go into that space in the first place.
I didn't exactly know what I was getting into.
Okay.
But thank you.
So you went in and then you felt it. You were like, whoa.
And, you know, I'm my mother's child. I went early. And because I thought, you know, it's like movie theater rules. Like, you get in early, you get to pick what seat you want, right?
Sure.
No, that's not what this conservative group had. They
saw you coming.
No, they escorted everybody by the order.
Okay.
So I was number 14. Well, there are 28 seats per row.
Okay.
So and that makes me front row, dead center.
Okay.
5 feet away from the speaker.
Right.
And my long red hair, had a hairpiece, had my too cute to be binary hoodie, like 5 feet away from the speaker, and he's looking at me, and like in his whole, it's I don't know if I could say Michael Knowles as this week. I mean, that whole group, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, like that. They're trying to get leftist.
They're provocateurs.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people speaking up, and I didn't want them to because it's just be a silent protest. Yeah. But I realized, hey, you know what? They're traumatized in the moment, and so am I.
Yeah.
Their response is to speak up. Mine is like, I'm stone cold.
Sure.
But like he wants me. He's thinking that I'm gonna, and I'm just trying to. I'm not giving him the satisfaction. So we get out of there, and everything breaks loose. All this happened, and then so the question for those of us who went through it is, how do we respond? Well, the only two people that were really interested and really seeking justice was the person that was arrested. I will never condemn what they did. They felt attacked, and they felt abandoned by their university, and they squirted him with some lavender oil.
Okay.
And, you know, that person really couldn't do much because of the legal situation they were in at the time. No one else that was there, they were really scared, and that's totally like very valid. My reaction was, well, we got to do something in this community.
Yeah.
And I'm the only person that was there, was hurt, and that has the desire and the ability to step forward.
Okay.
So what do we do? So the first ever Kansas City Trans Pride March happened 2 months later, and around the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and we marched around.
That was the first one?
The first ever Kansas City Trans Pride event.
Okay. Wow.
Like we have, the greater pride.
Yes, yeah.
But
still, that's kind of late, a little bit. Yeah. Compared to other big cities.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had 250 people. It was amazing and powerful.
Great.
And it was all community. We had marshals, we had medics, shuttle drivers, and we had legal observers just to make sure. Just to observe, to be a neutral party. And I mean, that was really awesome just to see community take care of community.
Yeah. Okay, so we took a little bit of a break because we're in a basement and there was some pipes and water action and blah, blah, blah. I was wondering about the action you took at the Michael Knowles event at the university. Because usually when I've been in this sort of space where you're protesting, it's like direct at an event where there's a bad actor, let's say. Usually there's some kind of plan about what people do and what kind of support there is on the outside and that sort of thing. I was wondering, just what you can say about it, what kind of plans you guys had.
And like I said, the university really curtailed what could be done. So a person took a little bit of a risk and organized what was supposed to be a silent protest. Yeah. And what it was is it was a free event, but you had to register ahead of time. So we had people that even had weren't even going to show up, trying to claim tickets just to to have it as empty as possible after we left.
Sure.
And so the whole idea was the organizer was going to have a timer on their phone, somewhere like 5-10 minutes, and when it went off, we were all supposed to get up. And again, we couldn't meet, we couldn't discuss, we couldn't all get on the same page, and there were a lot of people triggered. And like you said,
right.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
that is like these conservatives.
He's been saying some really bad stuff.
Oh,
about eradicating people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eradication of people. Yeah,
and it is totally like, from what I can tell, he's trying to get the leftists and liberals and trans people to say things that he can edit and clip in.
Right. Because he's on the radio. That's his whole job.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that they're really triggered, and they're speaking up. And like I said, like I didn't want them to, but afterwards I was like, you know what? Hey, that's what they needed at the moment.
Yeah.
So the plan was to be silent. A lot of people went a different direction and clapped back and booed him and challenged him, and I really appreciate that now. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then at some point, like, I think people realize, okay, this isn't going anywhere. We're gonna have our moment now, and someone said we're out of here. We all get up, we all walk out, and the person that sprayed Michael Knowles was right on the outside, and as we filtered out, they filtered in, and that happened, and it was just all chaos. So
in a way, it was a little bit separate because you guys were leaving,
and that was something that was brought to light later, was that person was not involved. Like that wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
That was just what that person wrote in that moment. Felt like what they needed to do to condemn this, to say, this hurts us. No matter how perfect Ivy League smile you put it, on it, and privilege comes with the advantage of being polite,
right,
and looking even keeled and reasonable. And sometimes, marginalized people don't have that privilege.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we have to scream louder.
Yeah.
And that was what happened. And like I said, I said all the time, is we were the only people harmed, and we were the only people blamed. And so that's where the Trans Pride March came from, is how do we reframe this? And so we did that one in June of 2019. As you can imagine, our plans to do follow-up ones didn't
during COVID, right?
Yeah. We didn't get to. I
wonder about that now. Like, are people a little bit sort of starved for community and affection and get-togethers now that that's coming about again? Like we can gather again.
From what I've seen, people are more. So I'll give you a good example of what I've seen. So before COVID, that trans support group that I help run would have 20, 30 people.
Oh, that's a lot.
But 40 to 50%, they had only been there less than three times or less.
Okay.
So that tells you the community's big, but they're not necessarily comfortable engaging.
Sure.
Now we're back into live meetings, and we have a set space. Now there's 70 people in a room.
Oh my goodness.
And everyone's coming back month after month.
That's the biggest I've ever heard of.
Yeah. And so
even ones in San Francisco I've been to were like half that size.
And so trans communities is needing each other.
Yeah.
And we're engaging. But so the flip side of that is 250 people in Trans Pride March 2018. I did the second one in October 1st of last year.
Okay.
There were 60 people that said they were going to attend. We had the pleasure of being protested by Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh no!
And
those turds.
Yeah, and I felt
everybody hates them.
Yeah,
everybody hates them.
I felt obligated to tell people, hey, they're planning on coming.
Yeah.
So that brought our 60 down to 30.
Because they're so abusive. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And so that just tells you, like, that tells me, like, people are less comfortable with that really visible activism, that really, like, out in the streets, but they need community, they need close community, but more
the peer-to-peer support stuff, or barbecues and lighter.
Right. And the most powerful moment was when after Westboro Baptist Church left, they left one street preacher who harassed us and had a megaphone. And I'm exhausted. I was the only primary organizer. We were attacked and harassed online months before, so everyone else dropped out. I had plenty of volunteers.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it was
so sorry.
And you know, like I say
people
now,
are wiped out, and so they drop out, and then it comes just to you.
Right. And now I'm like, I have the distinction. I don't know if this is good or bad to be personally protested by Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, like, should I say, is it a bad thing or a good thing? It's a bucket list thing for sure. Yeah. So. And
there must be photos out there.
Yeah. So there's young trans kids are there.
Yeah.
Between the ages of 7 and 13.
Okay.
And I'm wanting to get up, and I'm wanting to protect and shield these young people. And I do want to say, Parasol Patrol came out.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
So Parasol Patrol, they go all over the country. The main organizers are in Denver right now. But what they do is they're queer folks. They come out with their umbrellas that have rainbows on them, and they shield queer folks and kids from protesters.
Okay, great.
And so they came out and they were helping us, and I wanted to get up, and I was exhausted. I couldn't sleep the night before. I'm sitting here with a trans flag in one hand, my dog's leash in the other, can't get out of my chair, and I felt like, hey, it's my responsibility to go, like, shield these trans kids. And what happened is they advocated for themselves. They were making signs. They had noisemakers. They got in his face and said that they loved who they were. They loved their parents for supporting them. And then they said, "Go away. We don't need you here."
Even better.
Yes, and like better. that was a moment in my life. That was really powerful.
Yeah, I bet.
And, you know, at 44 years old, you know, it's like...
Because I don't know about you, but, like, when I was a kid, I definitely wasn't that empowered.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It you know, and that was just kind of a reminder of, like, hey, some of my best work can be done empowering people. Like I still have got a lot left to give.
Yeah.
But, like, what my focus is, I want to amplify the voices of these younger people coming up and their experiences, and like all these things that we've got going on now that are hurting all of us.
Yeah.
But they've probably got the most to lose.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that philosophy of leadership, because it doesn't just focus on one person. Like you were bringing up hierarchy earlier. Right. So we're all stuck in these hierarchies that have to do with people having power and authority over us in various ways. So you're breaking out of that.
Right.
By thinking about, being egalitarian, intersectionality, and also bringing other people's skills up.
Yeah.
And allowing them space to do what they need to do. That's really responsible leadership.
I try. Yeah. And the first Kansas City Trans Pride March, one thing I said is, I asked people, I'm like, look at my feet and look at my shoulders. What do you see? And what my answer was, underneath my feet are the shoulders of Martha B. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Sure. Yeah.
And what's on my shoulders are your feet.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
And that was something that I really wanted to really put forward. And I do want to say I am skeptic a lot of politicians a lot. And the system. I will say I am proud of Kansas City. We did get it right just a couple weeks ago. They passed a resolution that the city is not going to participate with the state of Missouri in the bans on trans athletes and gender affirming care for minors. Now, thank goodness, last week the attorney general dropped his emergency order.
Right.
Yeah. So which would have affected trans adults getting care, which that's really unprecedented. I mean, I think it's horrible that we're taking away trans care for kids, gender affirming care for kids, but that's getting to be kind of the norm in certain states. As terrible it is, but that was really an unprecedented thing.
Yeah.
And that we're really worried, like, wow, like, if that passes, if that goes into effect, how many more states how many dominoes are going to fall?
Right. And they've already done that. I mean, it's kind of like they're just going from state to state and trying whatever they can.
Right, trying what they can. Even, like, a lot of this is, even if they know it's doomed, they're trying to hurt wherever they can.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like what we were just talking about with Michael Knowles.
Right.
It's provocative. It's meant to hurt people directly.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And I'm seeing that in the community. Yeah. I'm seeing people, we need each other more, but we're not going to be as visible. So it's having that effect.
Right. Some people are going stealth. Some people are moving. Some people are pulling back. Even in this project here, people have canceled.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that, in just my personal opinion, I think that is one of the big goals, is to push trans, liberal, leftist, pro-choice, climate change believer, you know, everyone on the left, to push them out of swing and red states, to keep them red as long as possible.
Sure.
Like, and again, that's another balance thing is, hey, anyone who leaves, I respect that. Yeah. You got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
But those of us who remain, okay, now how do we regroup?
Yeah.
And how do we go forward? And, you know, something I said about a decade ago is, you know, it's a really nice theory, like, of all trans people, all queer folk, let's get up and let's go right now. But there are trans people literally being born here every day. Right. So, like...
And there's people who can't leave.
Right.
You know, they have family ties here. They're caregivers. They are impoverished. I mean, it takes a lot of resources to be able to move.
Exactly.
Right. Maybe they're ill or disabled and they have their care here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only certain people who can really just all of a sudden leave.
Right. Yeah. And so, I think it's, and again, also the same philosophy applies to us, is, you know what, no matter what the outcome is, and this is something I said at the second Kansas City Trans Pride March, I told the youngsters is, you're going to see a lot of things, but the one thing you'll never see is us give up on you. Like, that's kind of really my, you know, is we're, hey, you know what?
That's awesome.
I lived through the 80s and the AIDS epidemic as a kid. And I was like...
Yeah, I was a teenager.
I can't tell you we're not going to go through hell, because we are.
Yeah.
But you know what? We'll not give up.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I can guarantee you.
Right. And actually, that's a good example of when community did take care of each other.
Yeah.
Right. People were, men mostly, were dying. I mean, there was no good medication. In fact, the medications that they were coming up with were shortening people's lives.
Yeah.
Like AZT, for instance. And so the community rallied around, and ACT UP did their thing, and Queer Nation did their thing.
Yeah.
And lesbians, dykes, were taking care of gay men
who
they didn't get along with prior to that.
Right.
Right? The communities were very separate. So, yeah. Don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up. And absolutely, we can rely on each other.
Right.
And I think that there is there's a line in the Gangs of New York that really hit me. And
the Scorsese movie?
Yeah, the Scorsese that takes place during the Civil War. And one of the rich, privileged folks were saying is, one of the great things about poor people is you can always convince one half to kill the other half.
Right.
And, like, that really resonated with me as far as intersectionality and community. And it's like, you know what? Like, that is how oppressed communities stay oppressed, is we don't realize the collective power and voice we can have if we just give space to each other.
Yeah. And, if we all do band together, we're a lot bigger.
Yes.
I mean, just in terms of numbers.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, after that, there's money and there's power and that sort of thing. And I'm going to include women just as a category in that too.
Right, yeah.
Women just in general are being oppressed. Even if you're a conservative woman out there, you are still having your rights curtailed right now.
And that's something that I feel like a lot of these attacks on trans people, and this is something like trans women and trans femmes are being attacked and targeted, and I see trans men being ignored because like
we're always ignored.
Right, like they have to sweep you under the rug, because if they admit that some people that are who they want to protect, if they don't buy into, if they're not invested in the feminine identity, that dismantles their argument. And I think,
I don't understand the argument at all. Which argument are you talking about specifically?
The trans women in women's restrooms are an attack on womanhood.
Okay.
And this
so
is
my going into a men's room is an attack on manhood.
Well,
apparently,
they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that.
I go into men's rooms, but I really don't want to because they're disgusting. But
I've heard that a lot.
I'd rather just go into a single stall, please. But
what I observe is it's really hard to oppress someone, especially a woman.
Yeah.
Especially, it's hard to oppress a woman.
Yeah.
If you are not allowed to define them. If you are not allowed to set boundaries, say this is what a woman is, this is what a woman can be.
Yeah.
And if you let a person define themselves.
Yeah.
So trans people, whether you're trans men, trans women, signed female birth, signed male at birth, non-binary, wherever, I think we are a threat to the patriarchy of cis women, because if cis women look at trans people and go, oh, wait a minute, you're saying I do not have to prescribe to the socially conformed restriction of my gender.
And it's just an extension of feminism.
Right, exactly.
It's just an evolution of feminism, which is terrible that so-called TERFs, which is the term that they came up with themselves.
Right.
Because it was descriptive, by the way. Trans-exclusive radical feminists, right?
Right.
They came up with that term. They changed it to gender critical at some point. Just, I don't know. They change names more often than trans people do.
Right.
But anyway, that's why what they do is not actually feminism.
Right.
Right. Because it doesn't include all women. It doesn't even include men, which feminism actually does include men. It's a revolution in thinking. Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something like my roommate and I, we talk about. Like, we believe in egalitarianism.
Yeah.
The term feminism, what it does is it just recognizes the power dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And that's something like I've always said is, like, I don't feel like privilege is inherently privilege. It becomes it because it's, if the privilege is here and the disadvantaged people are here, like, I don't feel, as a white person, I don't feel like I get more than I deserve. I get what I deserve. Other people do not. So it's not about bringing me down.
Right.
It's about lifting everyone up to the same place.
Right.
In reality, if you look at it, if I'm here, empowering other people to raise themselves, because every disenfranchised group liberates themselves.
Yeah, right.
But the rest of us need to make space.
Yeah.
And empower them.
And we can assist.
And once they're here, guess what? I didn't get harmed at all.
Yeah.
And that's really
right.
And there's that narrative of, oh, if you let trans women in the bathroom, what do women, and what I would say cis women. Oh, I'm like, what did they lose?
Yeah, right.
What?
Or some people keep saying, oh, you can't say women anymore. Yeah, you can. Nobody's taking anything away from you. We're just expanding that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's to say, if I if I speak about a cisgender woman, or all cisgender women, I'm going to use that term. But if I'm talking about the ability to get pregnant, if I'm talking about the access to birth control, if I'm talking about feeding your newborn child,
right,
that does include more people than women.
Right.
And like
it may include people like me.
It could,
who look like me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a lot of people think when I do that I'm like advocating for myself, because and it can that can invalidate me, because if we're talking about women can get pregnant, well, if I can't get pregnant, does that lessen my womanhood? So yes, but to me,
well, there is that idea out there, that if you're not pushing out babies or whatever, if you're not demure, I mean, all those bad old ideas are still around.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think, like we've talked about, is trans advocacy is a really very powerful act of feminism.
Yeah, I agree.